Hey everybody, welcome back to the Supply Chain and Logistics Hub. Doing a little something different today. A lot of my videos are kind of, if you think about it, teaching lessons about certain aspects within the supply chain. I just did a video talking about tariffs and how that is going to play out and how it's going to affect supply chains. But I thought I'd do something a little different today where in front of me, I have my computer, and every month I send out a monthly newsletter to those of you that subscribe to it. And so I want to kind of go through each key point briefly. I'm not going to read it word for word, but just think some of the things that, I'm looking at that are on the forefront of my mind as I study supply chain, as I talk about it, and just, what you need to know for each month. So let's dive into it. And I think what I'm going to do is every month, I'll kind of give a summary of what I look at. And some of the things you're going to see repeat. There are certain reports that I look at that I find very valuable and I like to track on a monthly basis. There's other headlines, for example, in the news that they can change. So those will obviously differ in my reporting. But then also once every quarter, what I do like to do as well is I'll look at certain trucking companies, publicly traded trucking companies, and talk about their earnings reports, dive into them a little bit at a high level and just kind of say, hey, here's what I'm seeing. So let's get into it first. So with the new administration coming in, okay, one of the headlines I've been following is out in California. They have an agency called the California Air Resources Board. And really what they are, it's a government agency that's looking for ways and trying to adopt ways to make California's air much more cleaner, okay? One of the controversies or initiatives they have been trying to implement is having more electric vehicles in California, whether it be cars to end gas-powered cars, but I want to say it was like around 2030 is when they were looking to eliminate it. But also the same with trucks, locomotives, to all have them on a different form of power, if that will. No longer gas or diesel, whether it be electric, etc. And so what happened was, with Trump winning the election, that entity has basically decided to scale back their requirements, okay, to have greener and cleaner air because they know that they're probably going to get pushback from the current administration. So that was a big headline because a lot of these transport companies are trying to figure out, do I need to go out and buy, newer tractors that are cleaner and more efficient for the environment? Can I still use my old tractors? Let's just say for argument's sake, they decide not to do anything and just keep using what they want to right up until 2030. A lot of different options, but a lot of these companies now, that has been averted. I would say this though, just a personal opinion, administrations change. So while you might have a 4-year grace period, it could come back and they say, hey, as of now, in 2029, you have 1 year. We still want to try and implement this. Odds are that's not going to happen, but just something that I watched that was very interesting to see how that played out in California. The second initiative that played out in California is just the wildfires. And while, natural disasters have become more common within supply chains, again, I have to highlight this because California is a major import and export of products. So when you have those sorts of natural disasters and disruptions, that affects the flow of goods, supply chain. So how are they going to prepare for that? Are they going to have to reroute some of those shipments? Are they going to have to delay some of those shipments? I would argue that some of that, just as an example, the soot, from the fires, if that gets in the air, if that gets into manufacturing sites that are producing food, that could have to shut down lines. That could be a problem. So again, that's really something big that I've looked at. I haven't really heard much about in the news now. It seems to be under control, but just the total devastation alone is awful what happened out in California. So, I think they're trying to figure out, what do they do with that area? Of the businesses that are affected, like how are they going to continue? What can they do? Their supply chain has kind of been unraveled, if you will, because they can't open. So how do they kind of keep their business up and running? They have other sites. More than likely, some of these places are mom and pop, so they only have one place. So how are they going to stay in business? Again, a big development that I watched for that month. One metric that I talked about earlier in the prior video that I look at on a monthly basis is something called the CAS index. And that's C as in cat, A as in apple, S as in Sam, S as in Sam. And really all that is, that's a website I go to. And it's really a collection of freight invoices that this company processes. And they give you data every month. And what I like to look at that is it looks at shipment volume, month over month, year over year. It looks at freight expenditures, so what companies are spending on freight on, again, a given month or over year. And then something we call the line haul index. And all that means line haul is, what does a carrier charge from point A to point B, excluding fuel? So I'll look at some of those metrics and again, kind of see where the truckload market is, how it's performing. Is there volume on a given month? Okay, it's a really good resource. It's kind of detailed. So if you don't know what you're looking for, again, I would tell you that I try and keep it very high level for the purpose of this video. Again, those 3 metrics are what I'm looking at to really understand where things are going. Okay. Something else that I've been tracking on a monthly basis is just where inflation is. The latest reading came in at 2.9%. If you've been following the news, like the Fed is trying to get that 2% target. It's staying stubbornly high. They can't quite get it there. Even though they did make some cuts back in 2024, I would argue that 2025, it seems like it's still kind of up in the air, particularly with the tariffs that are now coming into play. I think the Fed really kind of has to watch and see how they're going to, whether they're going to implement another cut, if they're going to hold off and see how the economy fares. But that's something else that matters, because as we've seen inflation kind of ratchet up, okay, and the Fed try and tamp it down, we've seen demand for truckload services kind of, cater, if you will. A lot of trucking companies going out of business, a lot of brokers going out of business, just because you have these, these costs that are just crippling these companies. And again, with not much manufacturing, it's very hard for them to survive. So again, another metric that I want to watch on a monthly basis. And who knows, they started increasing rates in 2022. They put a pause on it. It is where it is. They made 3 cuts last year. I think 2025 might just be steady as it goes, but I'm not an economist, okay? Another development that we talked about, again, I made a prior video about this, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time, is just the tariffs. How is that going to play out? What's that going to look like? Okay, the current administration is looking to impose those tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China. So if that really comes down the pike, it's going to be very interesting to see how businesses handle that, how consumers handle that. Really no one knows what to expect. I mean, certain things you're just going to have to buy. Like most people, they're going to heat their homes, right? They're not, they don't have to, but that's a necessity, right? Food prices, you have to eat. How are they going to be able to afford those cost of goods? Now, the latest development I have heard recently is Mexico. There's been a pause on the tariffs with Mexico for about a month, simply because Mexico has offered to help in securing the border to eliminate some of the fentanyl. That's the type of drug that's coming across the border, and also migrant flow. So we'll keep an eye on that. That'll be in my next month's report talking about tariffs as well. Another development, as I had talked about, is so for this month, we just had a few companies release their quarterly earnings for the 4th quarter in 2024. And when I look at, 2 of the publicly traded trucking companies that I follow is J.B. Hunt and Knight-Swift. And I'm not really surprised to see that overall their revenue is down, their income is down. A lot of this is just being driven from a very soft freight market. And I'll read you 2 excerpts from their CEOs that they had talked about in their earnings call. Just a quote is, Shelley Simpson, the J.B. Hunt CEO, had made a comment that it's been a challenging freight environment, okay? Adam Miller, the CEO of Knight-Swift, the freight market conditions have been choppy. So this is just what these trucking companies have been dealing with since 2022. I think everyone's just kind of waiting to see if this market will turn and we'll come out of it, and they'll start to see demand where rates will start to come up. Companies can kind of start to offset some of these costs in terms of insurance, labor, parts, all of that. But by and large, it's just been a very challenging truckload market, okay? And then another report that I like to look at, and this is probably the last item for the newsletters, there's something called a Logistics Managers Index. And it's a really cool report. I go onto it every month, and it's a collaboration of several university professors where they'll look at some of the data. And really all it is it's about 8 data points, okay? It's looking at inventory levels. It's looking at warehouse pricing, utilization, transportation pricing, transportation utilization, capacity, all of that, okay? And just kind of measures to see where things are. And I really like it because it doesn't just focus on transportation logistics. Again, you're looking at inventory levels, how companies are managing inventory given on where the economy is. Also looking at warehouses, okay? Because if you think about it, when the economy is humming along, factories are producing, people are buying things, there's a need for more warehousing space because you have that constant churn. Businesses are growing, they need more place to put that product. When the economy contracts, right, you might see warehouse utilization come down because now you don't have as much manufacturing activity going on. There's not as much product going through the network, and these companies that are maybe leasing warehouse space are renegotiating with their landlords saying, hey, we just don't need all this warehouse space. We need to scale back because demand has fallen. So a really good report, just looking at some different metrics. And that's pretty much what this month's newsletter was. So if it's something that you think you might be interested in, if you go to my website, www.hoffmansupplychainadvisors.com, at the bottom, you'll see where there's insights, and you just select that. You give your name, your email address, and then you can be put on a monthly mailing just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm looking at within supply chain, what's important, how it's impacting the business, and give you some good insights. So thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe and like, and enjoy the rest of your day.